and only Victoria LeBaum, who has been a dear friend for many, many years. And V has just come out with a brand spanking new book called Risk Forward. It is a gem that is relevant for every single one of us. And I particularly think of my entrepreneurial friends who are on this journey. And so many of us are risking forward every single day. V, welcome, and thank you for joining us. I can't wait to dig into this.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm busting with happiness to be here.
Yeah. Okay. So this book is important. I want everybody to go and get this book. But before we dive into, details of it and all the gems that come from this book, first and foremost, what is risking forward? What does that actually mean?
Yeah, well, it's a term that I coined based on really a type of movement, if you can believe that. So I studied with the French mime, Marcel Marceau, years ago, and there was a type of movement where you were a little off balance, heart open, almost like the sail of a boat, arched open with the wind. And I came to think of that like as a philosophy for how we do well in our lives when we move forward in our personal or our professional lives, even if we're a little off balance, heart open, and we head into the unknown.
Well, okay, so I want to know how you came to this because certainly it's come, you mentioned working with Marcel, who is the mime, and somebody was like, well, wait a minute. What does V actually do? Is she a mime? Like, so how did you go? I know you started off in a very creative career, and you've progressed now to the point where you're a coach, a consultant, helping CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. So walk me through this journey. Like, how the heck did this happen?
I love it. So I came from a background in the performing arts, from writing, performing, comedy, character work, movement, filmmaking, producing. And then I transitioned into the speaking market. I was a professional speaker, keynotes. From there, I started coaching speakers and I started working with CEOs, as you said, entrepreneurs, people on Oprah's stage, on PBS, TED Talks, C-suite executives at Microsoft, Starbucks, PayPal, across. And I started learning that as much as I was helping them with expression and creativity and their storytelling skills and being funnier and engaging an audience, things that we've talked about over the years, Stu, I also watched as I traveled around to these events, I noticed how everyone always talked about the importance of clarity and goals. And I'm completely for clarity and goals. I think they have huge value. But what I also noticed is when people were in between those moments, like they were trying to figure something out, they felt ashamed for not knowing. And so they would sort of talk about it, but then they'd whisper to me at lunch or like, I'm not sure. And what do you think? And I thought, why are we so ashamed of not knowing? Because everything I know from the arts is that when we're figuring things out, when we're in between moments of clarity, that's when our great ideas come. If we don't get the most convenient way out, like sometimes we go, oh, I'll just do that. Instead of going, wait, which is the right path? And then how do I move forward in that direction?
Well, and I think, and I'd love to hear your point of view about this, but like, isn't that why this book is so important for everybody right here, right now, who may not have extreme clarity about their pathway to success, so to speak, but maybe figuring it out, right? And so talk to me about that. Like, why is this book so important right here, right now?
It's so important right here, right now, specifically with the pandemic as well, because so many people are reevaluating their businesses and their lives. But I think it's important no matter what phase of life you're in. It could be that you've just lost a spouse. It could be that you're facing your entrepreneurial business, trying to figure out which path to go down. You could be facing a blank piece of paper or a blank screen. So it's so important because our time, we don't get that back. And often we get stuck in our heads and we get a lot of information, but we can't then hear our own voice. And this book gives you tools and prompts to help you find your way in a totally organic and authentic way. And these principles are from the arts. I've tested them around the world. So they're pretty cool, and you can speak to that, Stu.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think of, several moments in my life when I've been in that in-between zone, so to speak. The first one that, really changed the entire direction of my life was graduating university. Went through this honors business program. I, was trained to essentially go into the corporate world. And I knew for me that the corporate world was not a fit. Like, I'm not the kind of guy that wears a suit and tie. For me, like, sitting in a cubicle was not appealing whatsoever. Learning how to, market potato chips, that was not a thing for me. Like, I couldn't fit in that box. And I felt really awkward because all my peers were all graduating, going on to these big corporate jobs, and their life seemed set. For me, mine was just like, I don't want that path. And although I signed on the dotted line to like go work for, you know, a well-known company up here in Canada, my parents were happy. Everybody was stoked. I had done it. It just didn't feel right. So that was a moment. That was a moment in, we'll talk about this, like, because you, in your book, highlight some of the signs that, you know, to pay attention to. And that was, there was certainly many signs that were showing up for me there, but I want to hear from you. Like, what's an example of like an in-between moment for you?
Well, I mean, I had a similar one to you, and I think a number of people in the entrepreneurial space would relate. You know, I had come out of college, and all my friends were, you know, going into business school and law school and medical school and academia, and I was like, I'm not sure any of those is what I want to do. I had potential, I had aptitude, but I was doing different performing arts disciplines, and none of them really had a clear path forward to make money or a career. So that was challenging for me. And had I grasped something quickly just to say I had something, it would have been a big mistake. And it's happened to me in my personal life. Like, I didn't get married until I was in my 40s, and people gave me a really hard time. Like, "Ooh, what's Victoria's Secret? Not married yet? When are you going to get married? Time is ticking." And I would just look at them and I go, "Yeah, I skipped my first divorce." And then they'd go, "Oh, I should have done that too," right? So for me, it was like, in a personal, professional way, both. It was just, I always felt like I was on my own path.
Yeah. And I think, you know, there are moments in time all throughout our careers and our lives where we experience this. Like I talked about it. Yes, that's a traditional transition point from university into, you know, your career. But there was a moment for me, another good example of this was when for years, we had built up a very successful company called Wishlist Member. It was the world's #1 membership platform for WordPress. And there was a moment in time, and I remember it vividly. I was at a summer camp with my wife and daughter, and we're lying in this cabin, and it's pitch black. It's like 2 a.m. The rain is like pelting down on the tin roof. And I'm sitting there, and I can't turn on a light to, like, you know, read or do anything like that because, well, Amy's right beside me. Marla's just over there. I can't go outside because it's pouring rain. And so I'm just left there, like, with my thoughts. And in that moment, like, I was just thinking about life and what I'm doing in the career. And I realized, like, yes, there are parts of what I'm doing that I love, but there are parts where I feel like I was meant for so much more. And I couldn't explain it. I couldn't explain what that more was,
Right.
but I felt that pull. And so I want to ask you about that. Like, for those people who are watching that feel that pull, like, how do you explain that? How do you define that? And what should we be thinking and doing?
Great question. So there's something that I call the inner current in the book, and that is this line of wisdom, this inner line of wisdom that runs through each of us. It's in our cells, it's in our pores. Think of it like the electrical current in a wire, or the blood in your veins, or the current of a river, or the life force that rises through a tree. And we have that in our souls, in our bodies. And that has its own wisdom, and often beyond logic. And we're like, you didn't know exactly what it was beyond wish list that was the right thing for you, but you knew that wasn't it. And sometimes that's all we need to know, what's not it. And that can often give us the courage. It's scary, but the courage to say, at least I know that's not what I want. And let's see what else there is. But the courage is to say no. The courage is to say no to wish list or no to the offer and find your own way forward. Oh, you're muted for 1 sec there.
Thank you for that. I'm muting because there's a garbage truck outside. So real world, #real world scenario. But you know, and I appreciate that because, like, that's what risking forward is all about, right? Like, is feeling that, and yet being able to move forward through that. And so I want to talk about this because there are a multitude of ways to move through it. But one of the things that you talk about that is kind of controversial in a sense is that you have some strong opinions about goals. You have strong opinions about, like, you know, decision making. And so I kind of want to unpack that a little bit. Sure. Because it kind of, I think, you know, will give people a whole new perspective on this. So let's talk about, like, what are your thoughts about goals and how they relate to guiding us and or not guiding us?
Absolutely. Well, there's a phrase in the book that goal setting can lead us astray. And I really believe that because goals are taken as unquestionably positive. And I don't think that's always the case. And this is where I differ from most people. They're great if they're in line with your inner current. But what happens in a lot of industries, any community, is that people start to adopt each other's goals. And so, that happens with teenagers and they all start to dress the same. And that happens with people in the same cul-de-sac. They all want the same lawn and the basketball hoop. It happens with people in financials. They all want, say, the same yacht. And it happens in the entrepreneurial space, quite honestly. And, there was a big trend in the last few years, for example, where a lot of entrepreneurs started saying, I want to impact 10 million lives, or I want to impact 100. And they were just picking these numbers. But I was like, where's that coming from? It's just the fashion right now to talk about the number of lives you want to impact. It doesn't come from within. Or as a speaker coach, for example, a lot of people would come to me and they'd say, I want a TED Talk and a New York Times bestseller. And I said, yeah, you and everyone else. Is it coming from within? And so we adopt other people's goals in all kinds of ways, fashion and our business. And what I want for each of us is to find the goal that's right for us. And so that's where goal setting can lead us astray. And I think it's great to have them. We just have to make sure we set the right ones.
So let me ask you on that then. How do we first and foremost identify what our inner current is? And so, because what I'm hearing from you is the inner current is really the thing that's going to guide us and help us. But how do we identify like what that is and how to pay attention to it?
Excellent. Well, you'd have to buy the book, Stu, right? Because I talk about that in here. But one of the things I say is I ask a really profound question, which I won't give away here because it'll ruin it for each of you who's going to read the book. It's a game changer, and that helps you start to find the thread of that inner current. But then I have 4 questions that also help you, and a series of lists of ways you can identify if you're on your inner current or if you're off it. And I'll just give you a few of those now, not to be coy and to be teasy. But, for example, if you're feeling kind of pulled forward, excited, curious, interested, those are good signs. And if you're feeling the sense of dread, or you're disinterested, or you're feeling sort of fractured and pulled in different directions, those are signs that you're off it. And so just paying attention to those, and that kind of connects to the concept of a goal, like your goals should light you up. If they feel like some burden, it's probably not the right goal.
And what's interesting about this too is like, because we've had many conversations about this, you may not always know where, those, elements of curiosity and, interests are going to lead. And that's okay. It's okay. But totally. The first and foremost thing is just to pay attention to it, right?
100%. I mean, when I went to study with Marcel Marceau, the mime, people said, oh, what are you going to do with that? Are you going to be a mime? And I said, no, I don't want to be a mime, but I feel like this is important. Who would have thought that I would use mime to teach insurance agents? Right? Or to use mime analogies to teach sales at big companies like Starbucks and Enterprise Rent-A-Car. I mean, and that became a distinguishing feature. I didn't want to be a mime, but something pulled me forward. And I feel like there's a great concept of if you imagine a light ray coming into your eye, and if I was a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right, it wouldn't come into my eye, but that light falls for a reason. There's a wonderful essay by Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson. He talks about that, like there's a reason that idea came to you. And there's a reason you're pulled forward, whether it's mime or you want to, for some reason you can't identify, but you're curious. And for those of you who are parents, oh my God, let your kids follow their curiosity. Because a lot of parents are like, oh, they can't do that. That won't make money, or where's that going to lead? But you don't know, because that's their hidden genius at work. And that's the subtitle. Embrace the unknown and unlock your hidden genius. So we have to, as parents, as families, as friends, colleagues, not get in each other's way, but encourage them to follow that curiosity and see where it takes them.
Well, I want to talk about the book and that's what we are discussing, what's in the book, but the book is an incredible experience. And I know this has been a labor of love for many, many months, years, in fact, for you. And the attention to detail is second to none. Like when I received the digital version, the advanced digital version, I was like blown away. I can't wait to get the physical version when it comes out on March 16th. So everybody mark that date down, March 16th, which, by the way, you can get by going to riskforward.com/book. And we're talking about some of the additional bonuses that you're giving with the book here in just a minute. But the book is an amazing experience. And so I want to talk to you about this, because what's fun about this is you're risking forward in the process of creating and sharing this book. So talk to me about that. Like, how was this experience? It's kind of like a meta upon meta upon meta thing.
Oh, you're so on it. It's exactly right. Well, first off, deciding to write Risk Forward was a gigantic risk for it. It's like you leaving wish list. Because like some of you know me, I built a whole business called Rock the Room, and I was very known for that. And I'd done some stuff around Risk Forward, but when I had the opportunity to choose, I felt like for reasons I couldn't totally identify logically, I felt like Risk Forward was the right next book. And a lot of people said, why are you going to do that? Why don't you do it right, Rock the Room? And I couldn't explain it. I just said, I think this is the right move. And so that choice was a risk forward. But then the way I designed the book, like I thought, I want to design a book that's fun to look at, that you can read in any order, that you can dip in and out of, but that also has a flow front to back. So I had to construct it in that way. And then I said, every page has to be different. So like you never know what's coming. And I took that from my presentation skills work, where I say every slide should surprise the eye. So that, you don't know what's on. Sometimes it's a graph, sometimes it's a picture, sometimes it's a word. So every page, like you never know, and it keeps people turning the page. So the whole design is unique. And then I took some other risks, which I won't give away, but you'll see them when you get it in the book. It's fun. There are lots of surprises.
Yeah, well, it is amazing. And I can tell, I sent you a message right after, and I just said like the attention to detail of this, I'm not even talking about the actual content, which is phenomenal, but just the experience. It just pulls you in to continuously turn the pages, soak up all the wisdom. And it's a absolutely fabulous book. I want to talk about why it's relevant for particularly entrepreneurs, because this is my audience. I love entrepreneurs. These are my people. And I want every single one of them to get a copy of this book. But can you talk to us about why it's relevant for the entrepreneurial audience?
Absolutely. Well, entrepreneurs more than anyone have the opportunity to really pivot in their careers. Like we are the master of our own ship, the captain of our own ship. I'm an entrepreneur. You're an entrepreneur. We work with entrepreneurs, and the possibilities are extraordinary. And especially as you go in your business, like the more you advance, the more options come to you. And we have to be so careful about staying on our inner current, because we can go way off. And so the book has all these guides to keep you on course throughout your career. And I hope it's the kind of book that you will return to again and again, because if you read it now, you'll perceive certain things about your choices. And then if you come back in a year, it'll have a whole new meaning based on what's happening. But entrepreneurs have huge potential to influence a lot of lives. And when we're lit up from within, and when we're doing our best work, the extent of where we can reach is unlimited.
Well, and you talk about this in the book. I'm looking over here because it's right in front of me. But you talk about like staying on course. And, as you mentioned, the more successful you become, the more opportunities, come your way.
Yeah.
And that also creates an opportunity to get derailed.
Totally.
So I want to ask you about like, how do you know when you are experiencing that momentum and new opportunities are coming your way, whether this is like going to derail you or whether this is going to be the next level of, so to speak, risking forward? Like, how do you make that distinction?
Well, I think it's different for everyone. And we all have different variables we have to consider. So everyone's life is different, where you are, your finances, sort of your vision. But we generally have this inner compass that knows. And there are a lot of people that tell you, oh, you know what you should do, right? We have that in masterminds. Other people want to help us, and they're giving us guidance, and it can really clutter our own voice and keep us from our own vision. So the first thing, there's a section of the book called Advice. And I'll give you this here, not to give away too much, but there are 3 questions that are good to ask. One is, how does it feel? Number 2 is, who's giving the advice? Like, are they qualified? And number 3 is it in line with where you want to go? And the feeling is really important, because sometimes, like with this book, a few opportunities have come along that I could not have anticipated. But the moment I heard them, I was like, oh, that sounds exciting. As opposed to, you know what you should do, Victoria? And I was like, I don't want to do that. So I think how you feel right away is a really good sign, because the body doesn't lie. Here's a great quote that's not in the book, but it's from a wonderful choreographer who was named Martha Graham. And she said, the body doesn't lie. It's a barometer telling the state of the soul's weather. And so our bodies are telling us that what's happening in our soul all the time.
Well, and I know from my experience, and I would love for you to speak to this, but the more that we stay on course, and really stay connected to what our inner current is and letting it guide us, the more we live a happier life.
Totally.
Because there are forces that are impacting us that we don't even realize sometimes, like that becomes stress, and stress builds and builds and builds when we're off course, so to speak. But the same is also true when you're on course. Like, you're just less stressed, you're more happy, you're more joyful, and you can't help but explain why, but you just are, because you are on course. And
Yes.
this is why I just love the book. I love the message of the book. I want everybody to go get a copy of the book. And we talked about being able to get it at riskforward.com/book. But I know you've also got some additional bonuses that are available when they go to that page. Talk to us about that.
Absolutely. So right now, before March 16th, and some of you may hear this after March 16th, we still have extra resources that you get when you buy the book. But for anyone who's seeing this, get it before March 16th if you can, because we have a whole collection of killer bonuses that are things I normally sell. And Stu knows the value of these, because one of them is the whole PDF ebook, really, plus a little video tutorial on how to use V cards. And V cards are these colored index cards. Stu has planned his live events, his launches with them, but there's a strategy behind them. And it's a very careful strategy. Some people think they know it, but you gotta understand it from the inside out. So I have a whole giveaway, free V card system. That's number one on there. We also have a listening skills workshop. I used to teach listening skills as a whole workshop. I would sell this, and we have a 3-part video on the 3 types of listening so that you can be a great mentor, friend, parent, colleague to help other people risk forward. It's visceral listening, verbal listening, and visual listening. And they're short and meaty and game-changing. So we have that. We have an audio that goes with how you can rock the room, really how you can risk forward, whether you're on a Zoom or on a phone call, a webinar. It's brief and it's completely game-changing. Super practical, easy to apply tips to help you risk forward and stand out from everyone else. And those are just 3 of the many. So you can go to the page and see the rest at riskforward.com/book.
Buddy, I'm so excited for you. The book comes out March 16th. Everybody go get a copy of it. Get a copy of it now, so that when it is ready to ship, you get it right away. It is a book that you're going to love in terms of the message. Number 2, you're going to love the experience of reading this book. It is a page turner in the way in which it is designed. It just keeps you moving forward. And third, it's going to get you thinking about the life that you really do want to lead, the things that matter to you, the things that light you up, and designing your business and life around those things by paying attention to what feels good, as V was saying. It has certainly been an incredible read for me. I sent you a message right after, and I was just like, V, this book is amazing. Like, I can tell the time and attention to detail, and the message behind it is so relevant for all of our entrepreneurial audience, especially, by the way, especially for creatives, because I think creatives can get so detoured by, thinking that a creative endeavor is a hobby and they've got to get, quote, a real job or pursue a real business. And this is what I just love about the book, is it gives people permission to follow the things that do light them up and find their own way.
That's exactly it. That's exactly the 2 last things I want to say. I'm going to do a little view of it here, a little sneak preview, because when people see what's inside, they see what it is. So let me just show you a quick flip through. You see how beautiful that is. And what we're finding, Stu, and I'm sure this was the case when you read it, when people read it, they go, oh, I got to get this for my sister and my brother. I got to get this for my best friend and my colleague. So for those of you who have that wherewithal, I would totally get 2 extra copies, truly, because people are giving them away, and that's what's already happening. So,
and it's a great discussion. It's a great book to have discussions about, no matter who you're with. And you mentioned, like, how relevant the principles are for kids. With 2 young kids myself, like, it's super relevant to have these even the conversations with them, like, at a high level, and being mindful of these concepts as a parent and guiding the kids along their journey. It's just so relevant. It's just a book that I want everybody to get a copy of. Go to riskforward.com/book. Whole bunch of bonuses available. The book comes out March 16th. V, any final words as we wind down here?
I would just end by saying that the edge of not knowing is the beginning of the extraordinary. Everyone has extraordinary opportunities ahead, and let's go do it.
Yes, girl. Well, listen, thank you so much. Thank you, everybody watching and listening. Go get a copy of the book, riskforward.com/book. March 16th, it comes out. Get your copy now. We'll talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.